house, you shut the door. Maybe if you had gone out, you would be safer.
Yeah.
But you normally close the door and keep inside. Maybe if you had gone out and raised an alarm and told 10 people about it, you would have managed the threat. But you normally close the door and sit inside where you are alone, isolated, and now what wants to get you can get you. Right? So my point here is, I am not in favor of bans, but I do understand that in the absence of certain regulatory instruments, you have to. So in India, we have seen the banning of certain platforms. For example, Chinese TikTok platform. Because they believe it was an imperative on national security. They did that. They have banned certain gambling applications. They have banned certain other fly-by-night operators who were creating apps and basically were harming the younger populations, the lower age groups, misguiding them, misleading them. So they have done things. But in the end, I think we have to consider 2 or 3 radical ideas to deal with the threat that we face, which is really radical. It's not that radicalism is new. Radicalism is now on steroids, digital steroids. It's not that we didn't have terrorists before or extremists before or crazy people before. We do. But now they are fueled and catalyzed and aggregated and mobilized through technologies. So we have to think of a few things. One, I think before any platform, AI or non-AI or quantum or any future technology, before future technologies become commercially accessible to everyone, we have to go to what I call the vaccine principle. That first they have to be tested in a small lab, then they have to be tested on a city scale project, and then they have to be tested on a larger human settlement. Only after we are able to study the collateral implications of their entering our lives should we be giving them the permission to be available to everyone. Today, all big tech companies of the world have used us as the testing lab. And they have made a virtue out of it. Microsoft upgrade, antivirus upgrade. This is the new patch to fix the system. We are their lab. They should be paying us money for testing their product that they are earning billions of dollars on. Would you ever allow a pharmaceutical drug to tell you this? That this is your medicine, now this is your upgrade for your medicine. You would shut the company down. Because it kills a human. Technology will kill a society if you are not careful. So we have to come up with a certain sandbox arrangement where we have graded testing of the product before we allow it into human. And by the way, Singapore and UAE as well.
Yes.
So Singapore and UAE are countries, and there are some others as well. And India is considering that as well on financial technology. Sorry, I sometimes speak too fast.
Okay.
But India is considering that as well. So I think one is we have to come up with a radical test and verify process before technologies should be introduced into society. Then they should be tested in the communities that they want to be in. There's no point doing a test in California and creating it for the Indian market. It should be tested here. So that's the first part. The second, I think there's a very interesting episode that has shaped my life. There was a political leader in Europe, and I will not name the person, who was asked by media folks, do politicians understand technology? And I liked her reply. She said, maybe politicians don't understand technology, but do engineers understand politics? Do technologists understand politics? And I think that is equally important. I think social sciences now has to be embedded in all the coders who are being trained today. They should understand what are the implications of what they are doing. Technology is no longer about getting efficiency and economic output. It is also about serving society and protecting what we really care for and stand for. I think those who produce our technologies are very young, because that is it's a young man and woman's sport. But more important, they are not necessarily exposed to the consequences of what they are doing. I think we need far greater dose of social sciences in our innovation frameworks, in our innovation policies. In fact, all funding institutions, government and non-government, should insist that founders have to go through a certain curriculum before they produce technologies that have implications on society at scale. I think that's the second idea, that let's rethink how we train those who create technologies and how do we support those who create technologies. But finally, it is not going to be handled by any single country or any single entity. We need global partnerships like never before. And that is what is failing our people at this time. We don't have global partnerships. Technology has become a zero sum. And between the US versus China and Europe versus America and West Coast versus East Coast, we are having many of these conflicts that prevents a principle-based normative framework that will, in many ways, come up with the 3 or 4 big laws that define innovation for the future. No, I'm a science fiction buff as a child. I used to read Isaac Asimov. I've read each book of his, and many others. But I remember Isaac Asimov had the 3 laws of robotics. Very simple. That the robot will not harm a human. Very simple law. So now there's nothing that you can do. Every program that builds an intelligent being has to be designed in a manner that they cannot harm a human. That a robot will harm itself before a harm falls on another human due to a certain. They had some 3 laws of robotics. We have to come to some we don't have to come up with legislations. All our political class loves writing long legislation. They have to come up with some 3 or 4 very simple principles that allow a reconciliation. But how does technology harm our relationship with our neighbors? Technology today can create wars. It can create unrest. It can create disturbances. It can harm international relations. It can send the wrong perception of a country to its friendly neighboring country. So these are challenges, right? But we are lucky. For example, India. If you look at India's neighborhood, we have land neighbors and we have maritime neighbors. Maritime neighbors would mean Singapore and Indonesia, would mean UAE and Saudi Arabia and some, and the Gulf countries. Land neighbors would mean Pakistan and Bangladesh. And of course China, right? We have these 3 big land neighbors and a much larger group of maritime neighbors. Some of our best relationships are with countries having distinctly different religious and cultural traditions. For example, I can without any hesitation say that the India-UAE partnership is the hottest stock on the global stock exchange. I think the last 10 years, the transformation you have seen in the political content, in the economic and business relationship, in the relationship between our cities and our peoples is huge. Yesterday I was going back to my hotel and we were celebrating the opening of IIM Ahmedabad Dubai campus. The previous month you had IIT Delhi in Abu Dhabi. You have ORF Middle East in the World Trade Center. So in some sense, our leaders are wise. Radicalism and radical groups and radical action can harm everything. Let's not be foolish and naive about it. International relations can be harmed, brotherly relationships can be harmed, friendly relationships can be harmed. We need wise leadership who looks above all this. So I think we know, for example, in the instance of UAE or India or Saudi Arabia or India, they know that yes, we may have our largest population might be Hindu, your largest population might be Muslim, but look, we are serving our people and our region. And religion is a pursuit that must be encouraged and nourished. And we do that. We celebrate our festivals. We celebrate our temples. We are not saying that you can't do this. We like to celebrate all forms of religion. And by the way, in both UAE and in India, right? We celebrate all our festivals together as communities. There's celebration of being a community, and yet national responsibilities of economic growth, of infrastructure, of progress for our people is what drives national policies, international relations. Our best friends come from very diverse backgrounds. And I've just named a few of them. Indonesia, Singapore, UAE, Saudi Arabia. You will not find a common pattern linking them up. You don't choose your neighbors. You celebrate with them.
But what do you think is the biggest misconception about the UAE-India relationship that you hope people would understand more? Because I know that I cannot see the UAE without India. They coexist hand in hand. And like we had a conversation earlier that we have many similar traits, many similar cultural morals and values.
But misconception in India or in UAE or globally?
Globally. And in India and in the UAE.
Okay. So look, I don't know about misconceptions.
Okay.
So I think there are weak assessments.
Okay.
For example, like you rightly mentioned, most folks don't realize that ours is not a trading relationship. Ours is a much deeper partnership across time. We were where globalization was born. The traders in this part of the world and the merchants in our part of the world were connected by the magic of monsoons. And then, of course, from here you were connected to Europe. And, that's how globalization began. The IMEC, the Indo-Mediterranean, has a crucial hub, and that is called the Middle East. In some sense, that's how the first global order was built, right? So we have a civilizational affinity to each other. I always say this with seriousness and as a good line, that every Emirati family has India in their history, from hospitals to schools to travels to Bollywood to holidays. They would have India in their life. And what is equally true is that every Indian family going ahead will have an Abu Dhabi or Dubai in their life. So we are connected across time through the journeys we have taken. That's the link. So that's the misunderstood. Yeah. We are not a $100 billion relationship or a partnership for connectivity or trade. We are a partnership of hearts and minds and of histories. We are connected by hearts, minds and histories, and we will be walking together. So I used to always joke and say that London is my favorite Indian city. That's no longer true. Dubai is the finest Indian city, and Abu Dhabi is going to be the innovation hub that will define India's future. So that's, one way of looking at it. So that's not necessarily understood the depth of our relationship. The second misunderstanding is, I think people don't realize the transformation of India's participation in modern UAE. From the blue collar workers in the past to those who are now sitting on the top floor of the big enterprises. There's a huge transformation. Roles that were typically reserved for Europeans and Americans today are now equally being, in many ways offered to and are seeing the presence of Indian leadership, right? CEOs and CEOs and the C-suites in big enterprises, be it the ports and infrastructure companies, be it some of the biggest financial institutions. You see the transformation of India's role in UAE's life. I think it's not necessarily understood that India today is part of the entire spectrum of the UAE society. Right from the financial sector to the construction and real estate to the big factories and of course the workforce. You see India all over, and people until they get here don't realize that that is the depth of the connection, right? You have 50% of the population of Dubai is Indian, and maybe close to 45 or so is across UAE. It's remarkable. Even I didn't realize that. You never realize it until you see it. Sure. And most importantly, and people will hate me, but barring Delhi, and perhaps Bombay, there is no Indian city with better Indian food than Dubai. I know many people are going to go crazy when they hear this, but it's true. The best Indian food very soon will now be found in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and Indians up your game. Otherwise, the best food is going to be here. I think that's something that's understood. On the other side, on just flipping the gaze, I think very few realize how important UAE is to India. It is not a state. A city-state or a trading hub or a connectivity hub. In India's geopolitical calculus of the future, where it sees itself as a $10 trillion economy, $15 trillion economy, third largest, second largest global actor, there is no future that does not see a very strong, vibrant UAE contributing to that journey. Without UAE, our journey will not necessarily be easy. For me, UAE is going to, in many ways, be for India that anchor that will allow India to discover itself. And I think the essentiality of UAE is sometimes not understood. People think that it's a Singapore or it's a... No. UAE has a political importance, has a social importance, and has an economic importance that is uniquely UAE.
A topic we talked about before this question was technology. And I want to ask, realistically, can India take a leap at the forefront of being a leader in tech governance, or is it going to stay independent to UAE, countries like the UAE, China, or the US?
Look, if we are partnering with UAE, that's a good scenario. So I think that is a given. Wherever we are in our technology journey, I think UAE and India are going to walk there together. In one way or another. We are both going to influence each other's future technology. But coming back to the larger question, is India going to be a technology leader or a leader in offering innovative technology governance solutions? The answer is yes. Why do I say yes? I say yes because signs are there. We are the world's most sophisticated digital payments architecture. We needed to reach billions of Indians and empower them and open bank accounts and include them in our financial institutions. And we did it using technology, and we did it faster, and we do it at a scale unprecedented. We are 5 times bigger than China. There is nothing else that we are bigger than China in other than population. But now we are 5 times bigger in digital payments on a daily basis, 5 times bigger than China. So can you imagine the sophistication of our digital payment architecture that allows every individual using whatever device they want to use, sitting in whichever place in the world they are sitting in, and interact with each other at zero cost, zero friction, zero time. Literally, it's an amazing technology. That technology is not just a payments technology. That technology is also a technology where you can actually message each other. You can do many things with each other. India has built a super app by maybe by accident, but we are there. We have built a billion-plus platform which only 3 countries in the world have: the US, the Chinese, and the Indians. No one else has a platform at that scale. So India has built a platform of its own on its own technology and open source. There are, if you were to Google the word mosip.io, and I tell your audience, go to mosip, mosip.io, look at the number of people outside of India who are using this particular technology. 128 million as of last week, maybe 130 million folks are using this. India is silently changing the nature of technology offerings for the developing world. 27 countries around the world use the Indian framework for technology. So that's there are signs.
Yeah.
Now, can we compete with, say, the ChatGPT and DeepSeek on AI? Maybe not. But we will build something which will be very distinct and different, and will make it accessible to the next 7 billion. ChatGPT is for the first 300 billion. DeepSeek is for the next 1 billion. We will take AI to the next 7 billion. We will give you AI on your mobile phone and in your language and in your location with low broadband connectivity. We will give you access to AI. So that is what innovation India is good at. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just telling you what could happen.
Yeah.
Like, for example, China built lowest cost manufacturing for solar plants. But India has the lowest solar power plants. So we take Chinese manufacturing, we innovate over it, and we do implementation innovation, and we have the lowest cost power in the world. So the point I'm trying to make here is, yes, our innovation will be to serve the next 7.5 billion. We are going to compete with the big boys in certain sectors, for example, semiconductors, for example, outer space, for example, quantum, for example, AI. We will create an Indian LLM, and we will make it both voice-based and multilingual. So we are going to change, because that's how we will cater to our populations. We are going to create those, I believe in the third mover advantage. We had the third mover advantage in telephony. We had the third mover advantage when it came to some of our connectivity and broadband based economy. And I believe in AI, we might be third, but we will do it better, faster, cheaper, and with more inclusiveness than anyone else.
I think if I had to keep the conversation going about this topic, we would take another 4 hours. But I want to drop all the topics and ask a personal question to you. What was one of your personal turning points? Was there any specific turning point that shaped who you are today? And people see the light of the end of the tunnel. Who is the light to the end of the tunnel to you? Or what was the light at the end of the tunnel for you?
When I moved away from the corporate sector, went back into college and did my studies and came back into the research segment, I think that would have been the turning point. I jokingly tell people that I was not a good engineer and I was not a good business leader as well. So, maybe I was designed to be in an academic research institution, and I stumbled into this space, and I've loved it ever since. So I think that 2007-8, when I gave up my corporate career and I stumbled into a think tank space, which was so different, dramatically different, right? I think that would possibly be the turning point. And what would be who is the shining light or what is the shining light? I think without doubt, humans. For me, building communities has been my passion. We have, scores of youngsters who walk through the portals. I may or may not have time for many other things in my life, but there is no request from any person who wants to meet me which will not be adhered to. I will meet anyone and everyone, whether they write to me in my spam folder on Instagram or Twitter or anywhere. I will ferret it out and I will meet them. I love meeting people, investing in people, believing in people. We have at ORF people as one of our deliverables as a mission, that we invest in people. So that is one of our fundamental objectives. On a more formal basis, we have now 2,400 young fellows who have done leadership programs with us in 132 countries.
Wow.
And of course, we reach out to, ORF reaches out to 70,000 or 80,000 school-going students each year in different languages on different projects. In India, numbers should not excite you because it's endless. It's an endless landscape. But we do that work.
Yeah.
So I think light at the end of the day are these smart, bright, young people who now sometimes call me and say that, can we work with you in a project, and they want to support ORF. I love that. They came through ORF, they are leading big institutions, they are wanting to find new partnerships. I think people, light at the end of the tunnel is people. Community is the cavalry. Community is also the salvation. For me, I bet on communities.
Throughout our conversation, you talked about reading books when you were young, and I'm sure you still read books today, and you're an author also of 5 different books. So I want to end the conversation today with one last question. What is a book recommendation you would give to youngsters today?
In the turbulent times that we live in, I want them to read one book because it will confirm to them that times have always been turbulent. There's nothing so special about this moment. Human beings have always lived through great transitions. And I think for that, the book they should read is Gun, Germs and Steel by Jared Diamond. It's a book they should not miss. In fact, my book, Geotechnography, is a homage to him. I think that book is excellent. Please read it. But with all the disorder around us, I would also advise him to read Samuel Huntington. But not The Clash of Civilizations, but his other work. I think it's called Political Order in Changing Societies, 1968, if I remember. I'm forgetting the exact title. But Samuel Huntington, 1968, Political Order in Changing Societies, and will tell you, what it basically tells you is that if the rate of change, social, political, economic, is too fast, institutions collapse and societies tear up. And in that sense, all those who demand dramatic changes all the time are basically asking for the collapse of what we built up. And therefore, I always tell youngsters that I watch movies of revolutionaries, but I invest in being an evolutionary. I like evolutions, fast evolutions. And I love revolutions in movies. And that's where I am.
Honestly, I really enjoyed today's conversation. And I want to thank you again for being in another episode of Trending Echoes, Dr. Sami Saran.
Thank you, Yaz. Thank you for
so
having me.
much.
Nous avons le plaisir aujourd'hui d'accueillir à Trends Madame Shannon Seban, membre du conseil municipal de Rosny-sous-Bois et présidente du parti de la Renaissance en Seine-Saint-Denis et militante.
Welcome to the new season of Trending Echoes. My name is Liazi Al-Hosseini and I'll be your host today with a very special guest, Mina Al-Arabi, Editor-in-Chief of The National. Hey, Mina.
Hi, Azia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very happy to be with you.
I want to start off this conversation today with a very simple question. Who is Mina Al-Arabi when nobody's around?
Wow, that's a good question. I think first and foremost, I'm the daughter of Abdul Muhim al-Arabi and some.
Welcome to another episode of Trending Echoes. I'm delighted to be your host today. We have a very special guest with us, His Excellency Sir Liam Fox, the former Secretary of Defense of the UK, and now the chairman of the Abraham Accords Prosperity Group. It's very nice to have you here with us.
It's a pleasure to be back.
I want to start off today's conversation with a simple question. Who is Sir Liam Fox when nobody's around?
Unshaven, because I hate shaving almost as much as I hate wearing ties, and with music on. So wherever I am, if I'm at home, if I'm in a hotel, wherever I am, and I'm not on parade, that's what it will be like.
So you grew up in a council house in East Kilbride before becoming a doctor and then pursuing your career in politics. How did that shape who you are today?
Well, the common factor, I suppose, in all of that was the type of household I grew up in. We didn't have very much money, but my parents were very focused on education. And so for Christmas and birthdays, we would tend to get books rather than anything else. And I was always a very avid reader as a child. And one day someone gave me a book about science, a big, lots of pictures for a 10-year-old, I think a 8-year-old I might have been at the time. And that's where I got my fascination with all things scientific and medical. And it grew from there. But my parents always very much encouraged us to, my father was a teacher. He taught French and Spanish, which I used to speak not badly, but now it's dreadful. It's embarrassing. But the household was always very focused on, if you learn, this is the way you get opportunity. So I suppose all those different things had resonances. My parents were quite interested in politics. They didn't have the same political views, but they encouraged us always to take an interest in current affairs, and I suppose all those different influences just added up over the years.
Growing up in a household that is very much interlinked with politics, is that the reason why you dropped medicine? And so what drove that decision to drop medicine and to pursue politics?
I never took a decision to drop medicine, as it were. I was interested in politics. I was interested at university. I was involved in politics then. When I became a doctor, I worked in the health service in Britain for 9 years before I went into politics. And for a time, I would go down on my afternoon off from my medical surgery to go down and do some speech writing for Margaret Thatcher when she was Prime Minister. And then the seat that I ultimately was elected for was becoming vacant because the MP was standing down, and they said, why don't you stand for that? And so I kind of went into politics earlier than I might have anticipated. And I always thought that if I don't like politics, I can go back to medicine. But, 32 years later, I was still there. It's people will say, the implication is often, why did you study for medicine? Why did you get all that experience and then go into public life? I think actually public life benefits from people coming from a much wider range of backgrounds. And medicine gives you a particular, I think, advantage in politics in that it teaches you a sense of proportion. So somebody who's having a cardiac arrest feels like a crisis. Somebody who writes something in a diary column in a newspaper that you don't like is an irritation. It's not a crisis. And a lot of people in politics don't really tell the difference between the two. So I think that medicine does give you a sense of perspective. But also, because of the nature of it, means that you understand people's problems. You have to, to be a doctor, you have to understand the patient's backgrounds and, their social factors as well as everything else. And you do develop a picture of what the country's like that you live in. And I often think that people who go into politics who've not done jobs outside politics are at a major disadvantage. And, if you want to govern a country, maybe you ought to know something about it before you do.
True. So 32 years, so over 3 decades in the parliament. Very simple. What do you think was your biggest achievement, but what was also your biggest regret?
So, in the big picture, Brexit, leaving the European Union, which I had wanted to do for a long time. But more personally, I passed the legislation in Britain for people with Down syndrome to give them more rights in education and health and social care. Because I think that how you treat the most vulnerable people in your society is a measure of how civilized your society is. What do I regret? Well, a lot of things, usually not speaking out when I thought I should have. And in the latter years in particular, I thought that the government was taking the wrong trend in its economic policy in particular. I remain an unreconstructed Thatcherite on the economy. And I thought that its immigration policies were too liberal. I think that we still have some way to go on that, and I'll be speaking in the UK in the not too distant future, setting out how I still think we need to redress that balance, because I think the new British government is taking those wrong trends even further in the wrong direction.
So many people say that Brexit harmed Britain's economy, especially when it comes to the younger people. Do you agree with the fact that Brexit was seen as the generational mistake?
Quite the opposite. So for me, Brexit was a constitutional issue, and it was about Britain being able to make its own laws without being interfered with by any outside power. To give you an example that maybe those who are watching will understand, I was asked the question on Bloomberg TV one time, explain to an American audience why you want Brexit. I said, well, if in America there was a court in Mexico City or in Ottawa that could overrule the American Supreme Court, and there was nothing that Congress could do about it, you wouldn't like that. And they said to me, but we would never have allowed that to happen. I said, exactly. And for me, this was about Britain being able to take control of its own sovereignty. Now, of course, that has its pluses and minuses. It means that governments can make mistakes, governments can make greater achievements. Brexit simply said to the governments of the United Kingdom, you have more freedom to do what you want. Now, that's up to the people of Britain to decide which government they choose to put in that position. The arguments about trade, I don't think, don't hold up at all, because the majority of Britain's trade is outside the European Union anyway, and was always growing outside the European Union, including, it has to be said, with countries like the UAE, where the trade was becoming much greater. And Europe as a share of global trade is shrinking. So it made much more sense for Britain to give itself more freedom to trade with the growing bit of the global economy than the shrinking bit of the global economy. Now, whether Britain chooses to actually do that and take advantage of that freedom is up to the government of the day.
But what's your idea on, so do you see cracks in the idea of global Britain? Or do you think, because you said that that Britain is stronger even outside of the EU, but do you think there is cracks when it comes to the idea of Great Britain?
No, but
not Great Britain, global Britain, sorry.
No, but I do think that in the world at the moment, we're moving back from a commitment to a very integrated global economy with the rise of more nationalist or protectionist thought. I actually believe that the application of free markets and free trade is the way in which we've taken 1 billion people out of abject poverty in the world. And without becoming too technical about it, if you believe in the concepts of comparative advantage in trade, of course, you're going to have to continually adapt and to say, we want the benefits of global free trade, but we don't want the disbenefits in terms of what it may do to competitiveness in our own economies. You can't have it both ways. So you have to make the adjustments. And I think that if you try to apply protectionism.
Check, check. 1, 2. Check, check. Mic check. Hello. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum. Check 1, 2. Check, check, check. Okay.
It will fail. And in any country that says, how much of a tariff do I have to apply to a German BMW to stop my own population buying them? It's the wrong question. The right question is, why are they not buying cars produced in my own country? And so I think that the global economy is so integrated in the real economy that if politicians try to disaggregate it, they will come up with big problems. And I think there's a second one, which is, if by doing so you make it more difficult for poor countries to trade their way out of poverty, you're much more likely to trigger a wave of mass migration, because people can see what prosperity looks like on their mobile phone. And if you deny it to them through legitimate means, they're much more likely to get on a boat or get on the road. And I think that for policymakers in the West, there is often a dislocation between